Pay close attention to what I'm going to say today. What happened yesterday is not just passing news. It's not a normal escalation. In the Ukraine war, today we are facing a very dangerous moment. A moment that could have sparked a nuclear war and completely changed the shape of Europe and the world. Imagine with me, Ukraine has crossed the most dangerous red line in this war ever. The dangerous question now is not what happened, but rather how will Putin respond? Are we now just days away from the start of the Great War in Europe? Will we welcome the beginning of the new year 2026 with a shocking event coming? Key details will be revealed today. Stay with us. Dear viewers, peace be upon you and God's mercy and blessings, and welcome to our renewed meeting today, God willing, in this episode of the Opinion Series. I always talk about the strange transformations the world is experiencing, and I especially focus on this ongoing war in Ukraine, because it is precisely one of the main sources of the changes we are witnessing today. Yesterday, dear viewers, there was a new development, a very serious one, a change that might completely redraw the map of Ukraine and perhaps truly lead us toward a major war in Europe. I always tell you, dear viewers, that this war in Ukraine is the most ethical war in modern history ever since it began. The conflicting parties set red lines that must not be crossed. For example, the first red line was not to expand the scope of the war and to keep it limited only to Ukrainian territory. They set a red line not to target civilians, not to target civilian facilities, meaning there shouldn't be a scorched earth war. They set a red line, not targeting supply lines, energy lines, trade and so on. It means a set of red lines they set since the beginning of this war, but recently this war has gradually started to cross those red lines. It started with targeting energy facilities. Then it moved to Ukrainian attempts to bring the war inside Russian territory, starting with the invasion of the Kursk region. And after that, Ukraine began targeting Russian commercial shipping vessels. Ukraine is always the first to cross these red lines. Therefore, as I mentioned in a number of episodes, this gives Russia an excuse to respond in the same way, and the problem is that Ukraine will not be able to withstand the Russian response at all. We have a very famous saying, those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but here Ukraine is throwing stones while living in a glass house. So, the dangerous event that happened yesterday, which was a huge shock to everyone, is that Ukraine crossed one of the most dangerous red lines set in this war, which is targeting the country's political leaders. Yesterday, Ukraine carried out an aerial attack with more than 90 drones targeting the residence of Russian President Putin. Imagine with me that 90 or more drones were shot down inside Russian territory, and they were heading towards the residence of Russian President Putin. In plain terms, they were directly targeting Putin's life. What if they hadn't all been shot down? What if one of these drones managed to get past the heavily concentrated air defense systems protecting vital facilities in Russia? What if these defense systems were bypassed and Putin's headquarters was hit? It would be a disaster, and this disaster wouldn't just affect Russia, but the whole world, because then Russia wouldn't need to think before acting. They would definitely respond with nuclear weapons. Would Kiev, the capital, have vanished? So here we should pay close attention to these reckless actions by Zelensky. He doesn't care about the safety of his people, the Europeans, or the world. And when I tell you that Zelensky and those behind him are leading the world today toward a major war, I know exactly what I mean. There are things that maybe not everyone is paying attention to today, but everyone will come to realize these facts when they happen now. This attack failed, that's true, but for Russia, things won't stop here now. Ukraine has given Russia another pretext to launch a similar attack on Zelensky's headquarters, to directly target Zelensky's life. And Russia is not Ukraine. If Russia wants to eliminate Zelensky, it will succeed in that. Why? Because it has the intelligence and military capabilities and so on that enable it to do so. If Ukraine used more than 90 drones, Russia only needs to use a single hypersonic missile to achieve this goal. So what's strange today is that this is happening just one day after the meeting that everyone was waiting for. The meeting between President Trump and Zelensky. This meeting was strange, somewhat strange, because everyone thought that after this meeting that would be it. Finally, a ceasefire agreement would be reached. But in reality, there were a number of facts about this meeting. Just a few minutes before the meeting, there was a phone call. Trump called Russian President Putin. They had a conversation that was described as purposeful, professional, and the friendliest between the two sides. But we can say that this call officially confirmed Russia's status with Trump. It confirms that any step that could be taken between Trump and Zelensky must, above all, have Putin's approval. Trump sent a message that he will indeed receive Zelensky, and he will actually negotiate with him about stopping this war in Ukraine, but only after getting the opinion and prior approval of Russian President Putin. In general, the first thing to note about this visit is that Zelensky arrived in America, but there was no one to receive him at the airport except for the staff of the Ukrainian embassy in Washington. When Russian President Putin visited Alaska a few months ago, he was received at the airport by American President Trump, who gave him a grand welcome with a red carpet, airplanes, and so on. Zelensky didn't get any of that kind of reception. It's a message, maybe it's normal from Trump. I consider it very normal, because you can't compare Russia and Ukraine, but it's a message from Trump that Ukraine is just a functional state, serving the liberals' agendas. And at the same time, it's also a message that Zelensky is just a clown, just a puppet in their hands. He's even an illegitimate president now in Ukraine. His presidential term ended a year ago. So, according to protocol, the presidential protocol in America shouldn't treat Zelensky like other heads of state. And Trump, as I explained to you in several episodes, only respects the strong. He gives importance and attention to the strong while he humiliates the weak. The second observation is also that during this press conference, which was after his first meeting with Trump, Zelensky spoke with the help of a paper. He didn't speak off the cuff. He was just reading what was written on the paper, what was dictated to him. This is unusual, as Zelensky usually speaks without relying on a paper. And this confirms something very important. It confirms that the meeting did not go well. In fact, there was no optimism at all. Some international newspapers said there was optimism from this meeting, but in reality, not at all. This war in Ukraine will not stop, and the proof came quickly with this attack that targeted Putin right after this meeting. So what does Ukraine want now? Does it just want to buy more time? It wants to make Trump believe that it is engaged in his peace plan, but in reality, it is doing other things. That's why the Ukrainian administration was worried that Zelensky would reveal this truth, and the reality that was present in this meeting. They were concerned about anything Zelensky might say in front of the press cameras, and that what he said might not please Trump. Therefore, this press conference turned into an exchange of words, just like it did months ago. The Ukrainian administration didn't leave Zelensky any room for spontaneity or improvisation, and they prepared what he would say in writing, so that Trump wouldn't discover Zelensky's true intentions. The third observation is to determine the main topic of this meeting. What was it? Of course, it was to secure sufficient security guarantees for Ukraine, and most importantly, to obtain American security guarantees. So what did Zelensky say about this topic? He said that the American security guarantees for Ukraine have been agreed upon 100%. That's good, but pay close attention. What did Trump say? Trump said that the issue of this war in Ukraine is 95% solved. Is this reasonable, this percentage? Is it believable? Anyone who hears this percentage? And with these statements, one would think that it's over, an agreement has been reached, and in just a few days, this war will come to an end. In reality, these were just baseless statements, far from the truth. Mateen, the matter still lacks the approval of the victorious party in this war, Russia. And now the matter is settled. After this new red line was crossed, it's settled. There is no place now for any plan, any final peace plan. Zelensky met Trump, and he has a completely different peace plan, consisting of 20 points, instead of the 10-point plan that Russia recently agreed to. For example, we find Zelensky's plan talks about security guarantees from America and from NATO, while Russia's position is clear. Russia categorically rejects any deployment of foreign troops on Ukrainian territory, regardless of who these troops are. Russia entered this war to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. That is the goal. If it allows French, German, British, or any other NATO troops to be present on Ukrainian territory, it would be as if it did nothing, because in essence, who are these NATO troops? French, German, British, Polish, and other troops. The second point is that Zelensky's plan to stop the war is also based on the current front lines in the battlefields. Russia is also clear here, saying that it will never give up the full annexation of the territories of these 4 regions it claims from Donbass. And other than that means Putin is saying clearly that if Ukraine does not withdraw from these areas, Russia will take them by military force. So the Russian army advanced very quickly towards annexing these areas and is victorious, so don't expect Russia to give up on this goal at all. 2 days ago, the annexation of one of the main cities in the region, Mariupol, was announced. Russia has taken major escalatory steps by cutting off supply routes to the Odessa region, as I mentioned before. This signals the start of strong new plans. Now, Russia says if Ukraine doesn't withdraw from the remaining Donbas areas, which Russia took by force and not diplomacy, Russia's objectives will change. This means the conditions for ending this war will change at that point. Then, there won't be talk about Donbas. The discussion will be about Odessa or other areas, and maybe even about the entire territory of Ukraine. Because what is Zelensky saying now? He says that the Ukrainian army will continue fighting. If he loses these territories, he can end the war and ignore Russia's terms, since he will have already lost militarily. But Russia responds to him today saying that's just a dream. They tell him if we take these territories by military force, then we will demand other territories as a condition to stop the war. That means these conditions will become bigger and harder then. So here, pay close attention to Zelensky's statements during the press conference after his meeting with Trump. What did he say? He came up with a strange new proposal. He said that he is ready to put the issue of withdrawal from these areas to a referendum, meaning he wants the Ukrainian people to decide, like an election or a referendum, on whether to withdraw. Can the Ukrainian army withdraw from these areas? The people decide, but why? This is just to buy more time, to gain a truce during which the Ukrainian army can reorganize, get new weapons from the Europeans, and so on. He doesn't want any referendum like this at all, and he won't allow this referendum, as if the Ukrainian people would vote to give Donbass to Russia. Why? So that this war will stop? People now just want the war to end by any means. Stopping it is all that matters to them. What does Zelensky want now? Is he just trying to buy time? To reorganize the ranks of the Ukrainian army and return to fighting again after 2 months of this truce. But Trump knows this plan, so he also rejects this proposal. He knows very well that the truce will only prolong this war, and he said this openly. I mean, Trump knows Zelensky's plans very well. Who is pushing Zelensky? Yesterday, Trump admitted something important. What was it? He said that the one who attacked the nuclear power plant in Ukraine was Ukraine itself, not Russia, and he said that he will not tolerate such provocations in the future. So this clearly shows that Trump knows very well all of Zelensky's games, and the games of those liberals in Europe, meaning the leaders of the liberal world and so on. He knows that Ukraine hit the nuclear power plant with missiles, maybe Russian ones, to put the blame on Russia, as if it was the one who attacked. And thus they presented it to the international community, to America first, as an attempt to drag America into this war. Trump knows that the Russian drones that penetrated the airspace of Poland, Belgium, and a number of other countries are actually Ukrainian. He knows the plans that the Ukrainian and British intelligence agencies were involved in. So, anyone who was following this news and this meeting between Trump and Zelensky thought that an agreement was close. They really believed there would be an agreement. But the Ukrainian response came quickly. Even without this Ukrainian attack, there is no agreement close, because with these conditions, Russia can never agree. What did Macron say? Follow the article and Macron closely so you know Russia can't agree. He said that a new alliance will be formed next January, an alliance of countries guaranteeing security in Ukraine, countries that will send troops to Ukraine to protect Ukraine. He said that during this month of January, there will be meetings in the capital, Paris, to finalize this alliance, and as a result, they will send security guaranteeing forces to Ukraine. Will Putin accept this? Will Russia accept this? So, what are you waiting for? Now, wait for the Great War in Europe. In summary, if we want to sum up what happened yesterday, what happened is that Trump gave a new deadline, limited to a few weeks, and he warned Ukraine about the risk of losing more territory during these coming weeks. He may have agreed to both the Ukrainian and European proposals. He agreed to this new plan of Zelensky when he received Zelensky, but he gave him time or a deadline to reclaim territory from Russia. Why? To make Russia accept these terms? That means Trump also thinks this way, and he expected a ceasefire agreement, so Trump prepared Zelensky. If Russia continues to gain new territory during this next phase, I mean in the coming weeks, Ukraine will have no choice but to accept these Russian conditions, even if they are greater than these. So this is exactly the conclusion. But Zelensky is stalling. He knows this is impossible, so what did he do? He started a very dangerous escalation that could lead the world to disaster. Now we will wait for these coming days. We will wait to see how the Russian response will be. How will Christmas celebrations be in Europe? Will Putin respond during the celebrations or wait until after the Europeans celebrate? What's certain now? And what is it that there is currently no agreement or consensus yet, and there will never be any agreement at all? The war in Ukraine cannot end except with another major war. Today, the European peoples must expect the worst. That's all for now, dear viewers. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. Peace be upon you, and goodbye.